All right. First of all, we want to welcome you to the state contest and congratulate you on advancing this far. Couple procedural things before we get going. Can everybody see the clock?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You won't have any warnings, time warnings or anything because you have the clock. All right. You have your motion cards in front of you. There's also slips of paper. You can write on either of those during the course of your meeting. And Madam Chairperson, you also have paper at your podium. You're free to write on any of that. At the end of the meeting, you are needing to leave anything that you write on here, not take it with you. Okay?
Yep.
All right. We're going to go ahead and give you your 1 minute, and then after that, Madam Chairperson, you're free to start once they complete the 1 minute. Okay? You guys can go ahead and get started.
The meeting room will come to order. We are now holding a meeting of the VIT FFA chapter. Madam Vice President, are all officers at their stations?
I shall call the roll of officers, determine if they at their stations, and report back to you, Madam President. The Sentinel.
Stationed by the door.
Your duties there.
Through this door pass many friends of the FFA. It is my duty to see that the door is open to our friends at all times and that they are welcome. I care for the meeting room and paraphernalia. I strive to keep the room comfortable and assist the President in maintaining order.
The reporter.
The reporter is stationed by the flag.
Why by the flag?
As the flag covers the United States of America, so I strive to inform the people in order that every man, woman, and child may know that the FFA is a national organization that reaches from the state of Alaska to the Virgin Islands and from the state of Maine to Hawaii.
The treasurer.
Stationed at the emblem of Washington.
Your duties there.
I keep record of receipts and disbursements just as Washington kept his home accounts, carefully and accurately. I encourage thrift among the members, and I strive to build up our financial standings through savings and investments. George Washington was better able to serve his country because he was financially independent.
The secretary.
Stationed by the ear of corn.
Your duties there.
I keep an accurate record of all meetings and correspond with other secretaries wherever corn is grown and FFA members meet.
The advisor.
Here by the owl.
Why stationed by the owl?
The owl is a time-honored emblem of knowledge and wisdom. Being older than the rest of you, I am asked to advise you from time to time as the need arises. I hope that my advice will always be based on true knowledge and ripened with wisdom. Madam Vice President, why do you keep a plow at your station?
The plow is a symbol of labor and tillage of the soil. Without labor, neither knowledge nor wisdom can accomplish much. My duties require me to assist at all times and direct the work of our organization. I preside over meetings in the absence of our President, who's placed beneath the rising sun.
Why is the President so stationed?
The rising sun is a token of a new era in agriculture. If we will follow leadership of our President, we should be led out of the darkness of selfishness and into the glorious sunlight of brotherhood and cooperation. Madam President, all officers are at their stations.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. The Secretary will call the roll of members.
There are 7 members and numerous guests present, Madam President.
Thank you. FFA members, why are we here?
To practice brotherhood, honor agricultural opportunities and responsibilities, and develop those qualities of leadership which an FFA member should possess.
May we accomplish our purposes. I now declare this meeting of the VIT FFA chapter duly open for the transaction of business or attention to any matters which may properly be presented. Is there any new business?
Madam President.
Mason.
I move that the VIT FFA sponsor a family farm to fork dinner for the FFA members and their families this fall.
Second.
It has been properly moved and seconded that the VIT FFA sponsor a family farm to fork dinner for FFA members and their families this fall. Is there any discussion?
Madam President.
Mason.
I am on board with this motion because I think this would be a great way to reward our members for all the work they put in during this year. I also believe this will be a great thing for the parents as well because it will show how much we care about our community. That's why I encourage you to vote in favor of this motion.
Madam President.
Elena.
I am not in favor of this motion. I feel that our chapter does not have the funds for this, and we already host a lot of dinners, and this would be too much. So I encourage you to vote with me and vote no.
Madam President.
Kristen. I'm in favor of this motion. I think this is a great way to honor our FFA and introduce FFA to their families. That's why I encourage you to vote yes on this motion.
Madam President.
Cameron.
I uphold this motion. I think this is a great way for us to involve more of our FFA officers and their families. And seeing as we had a work auction which raised over $10,000 in funds, we have enough money to be able to sponsor this event to its fullest capabilities, which is why I encourage my fellow delegates to vote with me and vote yes.
Madam President.
Owen.
I endorse this motion. Firstly, because this would be a great way to begin the school year by having a forked dinner for FFA members. Secondly, we have lots of willing farmers in our area that would likely donate or even host this event. So I encourage you to vote with me on this motion.
Madam President.
Colby.
I strongly agree with this motion. Saying how we are a big farming community, it will be very successful. And secondly, it could show how our FFA community, or our FFA is involved in our community. And that's why I encourage you to vote yes on this motion.
Madam President,
Elena.
I am not in agreement with this. I feel that we won't have enough help since our officers are involved in a lot of activities during the fall. So I encourage you to vote with me and vote no.
Madam President.
Cameron.
I uphold this motion. I think this would be a great way to support our families. And seeing as we have had many dinners already that have turned out great, I think that this will do the same, which is why I encourage my fellow delegates to vote with me and vote yes.
Madam President.
Mason.
I am on board with this motion, and as my fellow delegate said earlier, we have a very supportive community. And this will shine very greatly on our chapter because of many dinners we've held. This will be another one that will be able to encourage our community to get more involved. That's why I encourage you to vote in favor of this motion.
Madam President.
Colby.
I move to amend the main motion by striking out the words fall and adding the word spring. So the motion will now read, I move that the VIT FFA sponsor a family farm fork dinner for FFA members and their families this spring.
Second. It has been properly moved and seconded that we amend the main motion to strike out the words fall and add spring, so that if passed, the motion will read, I move that the VIT FFA sponsor a family farm to fork dinner for FFA members and their families this spring. Is there any discussion?
Madam President.
Kristen. I think this will be.
I rise to a point of order.
State your point.
Seeing as Colby was the maker of the motion, he should get the first chance to debate.
I stand corrected. Colby, being maker of the motion, you may speak first.
Madam President, I am for this amendment, saying how we held a work auction and we have the funds to hold it. And secondly, this could be a way that our FFA celebrates how well the planting season went. And that's why I encourage you to vote yes on this amendment.
Madam President.
Elena.
I stand opposed to this motion. I feel that we do not have enough time to plan this since it's in the spring. So I encourage you to vote with me and vote no.
Madam President.
Cameron.
I uphold this motion. I think that this would be a great idea, seeing as this is a great way to end off our school year. And seeing as the school year is coming to an end, most things are going to be going on, meaning that more people can actually attend this, which is why I encourage my fellow delegates to vote with me and vote yes.
Madam President.
Mason.
I am strongly against this motion because it is planting season. We won't have the crops that we need to hold this event. And seeing that we have such a large farming community, everyone will be working in the fields and won't be able to come to this event. That's why I encourage you to vote against this amendment.
Madam President.
Kristen. I'm inclined to agree with this motion. I think this will be fun for our chapter and a good way to honor our members. And I also think that this will be a less busy time for our chapter members. That's why I encourage you to vote yes on this motion.
Madam President.
Owen.
I am in favor of this amendment. This amendment will allow our farmers that are just got done planting to have a celebration. Because in the fall they are very busy harvesting the crops. So I encourage you to vote with me on this motion.
Madam President,
Elena.
I move that we take a 15-minute recess for bathroom and to get more information on this topic.
Second.
It has been properly moved and seconded that we take a 15-minute recess to use the bathroom and gather more information on this topic. We will now proceed to vote. Those in favor of a 15-minute recess, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay.
Nay.
Recess fails. Is there any other discussion?
Madam President,
Cameron.
I move that we refer this matter to a committee of 3, appointed by you, Madam President, with all powers to act.
Second.
It has been properly moved and seconded that we refer this matter to a committee of 3, appointed by myself with all powers to act. Is there any discussion?
Madam President.
Cameron.
I uphold this motion, seeing as this would be a great way for us to gather more thorough information on this topic and discuss this at a later date, which is why I encourage my fellow delegates to vote with me and vote yes.
Madam President.
Elena.
I stand opposed to this motion. I feel that we've had a lot of good debates and we should just vote now. So I encourage you to vote with me and vote no.
Madam President. Kristen. I'm inclined to agree with this motion, and I agree with my fellow members. I think we have plenty of information and we should just vote now. Is there any other discussion? We will now proceed to vote on referring this to a committee of 3. Those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Nay.
Motion to refer to a committee of 3 fails. Is there any other discussion?
Madam President,
Colby.
I agree with this amendment. Farmers may have more time off because this planting season was so successful. And secondly, we have selfless FFA officers that would love to give up their time for our farmers. And that's why I encourage you to vote yes on this motion, or amendment.
Is there any other discussion on the amendment? We will now proceed to vote on the amendment that reads, the VIT FFA sponsors a family farm to fork dinner for FFA members and their families this spring. Those in favor of the amendment say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Nay.
Amendment passes.
Madam President.
Kristen.
I rise to a division of the Assembly.
Division of the Assembly has been called for. We will now revote with a show of hands. Those in favor of the amendment, raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Amendment passes. Is there any other discussion on the main motion, which now reads that the VIT FFA sponsors a family farm to fork dinner for FFA members and their families this spring?
Madam President.
Owen.
I am on board with this motion. Firstly, because many of the more unfortunate members in our community would have a nice meal. Secondly, this would create a better connection to our FFA members having a fork dinner. So I encourage you to vote with me on this motion.
Madam President.
Kristen.
I'm inclined to agree with this motion. I think having it in the spring will be a better way to involve people because they will be less busy. That's why I encourage you to vote yes on this motion.
Madam President. Elena.
I am not in favor of this motion. I feel like this is a busy time with track and other sports, and we won't have enough help with this. So I encourage you to vote with me and vote no.
Madam President,
Cameron.
I uphold this motion, seeing as it would be a great way to involve and support our farming community who give back to us all the time, which will encourage my fellow delegates to vote with me and vote yes.
Is there any other discussion on the main motion?
Madam President,
Owen.
I endorse this motion. Firstly, because this would be a great way to start the summer break. Secondly, this would be a great way to raise awareness for FFA. So I encourage you to vote with me on this motion.
Is there any other discussion? We will now proceed to vote on the main motion that reads, the VIT FFA sponsors a family farm to fork dinner for FFA members and their families this spring. Those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Nay.
Motion passes. Is there any other discussion? Mr. Secretary, do you have a record of any further business which should now be transacted?
I have none, Madam President.
Does any member know of any new or unfinished business which should properly come before this meeting? We are about to adjourn this meeting of the VIT FFA chapter. As we mingle with others, let us be diligent in labor, just in our dealings, courteous to everyone, and above all, honest and fair in the game of life. Fellow members and guests, join me in a salute to our flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I now declare this meeting adjourned.
All right, we're ready to proceed with your oral questions. Please remember that these are individualized questions, so you and you alone should be answering the question, okay? We're going to start with your vice president, and the required motion was to call for a recess. In the form that you presented this motion, is this motion to take a recess debatable or amendable?
No. It is amendable, but it is not debatable.
Okay, are there any circumstances in which the recess is debatable?
No.
Okay, and for the reporter, the motion was division of the assembly. As a member, if you call for division of the assembly, you are requiring the chairperson to do what?
Ask for a standing or raise of hand for a vote.
Okay. Under what circumstances can the chairperson deny your request to call for a division?
If they do not feel like they can make the decision.
The secretary, no required motion, but your question would be, in a business meeting, what are minutes?
Can you repeat the question, please?
In a business meeting, what are minutes?
It is how long the meeting will go on for, and I record those minutes.
Okay? And you said that you recorded those. What happens to that after this meeting?
I post the minutes and record them.
Okay? And for the treasurer then, the motion was amendment. What's the difference between a first and a second degree amendment?
The difference between the First Amendment and the Second Amendment is that you cannot amend the Second Amendment.
Okay? And if you have a main motion, a first degree amendment, and a second degree amendment on the floor, all pending at the same time, what order are those motions voted on?
The secondary amendment, and then the First Amendment, and then the main motion.
Okay? For the Sentinel, refer to a committee. In stating the motion to refer committee, you can't just say, I move that we refer this to a committee. You have to provide additional details. Give me an example of some details you might provide in that motion.
Other details you might provide are the number of people you're referring the committee to, who's going to appoint those people, and how many powers they have to act, so like all powers to act, for example.
And what is a standing committee?
A standing committee is a committee which specializes in special business.
Okay? And for your student advisor, your team demonstrated an amendment and a referral. When you're looking at the official order of precedence, what is the motion immediately above those two motions? And what is the motion immediately below those two motions?
I would say above would be maybe. Could you repeat the question actually?
You have an amendment and a referral, both of them. What is the motion immediately above it, above those two motions? And what is the motion immediately below those two motions in the order of precedence?
Above them would be my previous question, and below them would be postpone, definitely.
Okay? For your chairperson, when does the chairperson vote?
The chairperson does not vote.
Okay? And when would you be able to provide debate on a motion?
I would be able to provide debate if I relinquish the chair.
Okay, all right, that's it. Nice job, and you guys can leave all your paperwork there, but you are free to go.